Today I'm joined by Joe Jaques. Joe is the CEO of Jaques of London, the oldest toys and games company in the world. So welcome, Joe.
Thank you very much for having me. Great to meet you, Simon. Yes, that's
Great
quite the
to meet you as
introduction.
well. Thank you for joining us. So, um, Joe, for anyone who doesn't know Jaques of London, tell us a bit more about what you do and who you do it for.
So we are the oldest toys and games makers in the world.
Mhm.
We've invented games like Snakes and Ladders, Ludo, Tiddlywinks, Happy Families, Snap, um, the game of Croquet, the game of Ping Pong. We've designed the Staunton chess piece, so the way that chess pieces look like today is down to the design penned by my great grandfather. We now do a lot of younger years educational play, and everything we do now is about the importance of the power of play and how important that is in a child's development.
Fantastic. Well, look, what a history and what a uh, what a thing to be able to say that those all those games
Crazy.
that your predecessors have sort of come up with and invented that. That's a fantastic history. So, um, okay, so look, you alluded to it there. You represent the, I think I'm right in saying the eighth generation
Yes.
in a company founded back in
Yeah.
1795.
Yes, crazy.
Yeah. So, what's the biggest lesson from the past that still guides how Jax operates today?
Really good one. So much of it, we talk about purpose and, I've heard purpose called loads. We seem to call it purpose more now.
Mhm.
Um, what your brand values are is how we may have said it 10 or 15 years ago. But I think having a point to your company and a point that makes it unique, I think is a really strong thing. And if you go, I joined the business and we hadn't done toys for about 40 years at that point.
Oh, wow.
Whereas, I reintroduced them in 2017.
Okay.
But actually, we taught the world to play, and is that games? Is that toys? That's the history of everything. But the one bit of DNA that runs through the business is the importance of play, and obviously, it's important in adults, but nothing is more important than younger years play and younger years interaction. And that's really the thing. We used to do this 100 years ago, but that's really the thing that we are using our historical DNA to bring to life at the moment. And that's the really important thing. So that's actually a business having a purpose
Yeah.
and knowing that it's sounds a bit potentially egotistical to say that you're trying to save a world problem,
Yeah.
or because none of us are big enough to do that. But identifying a really clear need for what you're doing and then going about achieving that and servicing that need as honestly and as cleanly and as efficiently for your customers as possible.
Brilliant. And yeah, so keeping that purpose alive, keeping those, as you say, that those values are alive, really, really important. And actually leading on from that, you mentioned, I mean, looking at your website before this sort of discussion, it talks about what you said there, encouraging, I think the terminology is real play,
Yeah, real
away
play.
from screens and
Absolutely.
and you're promoting sort of like sustainability. So, um, why do you believe that those values resonate with parents today, and how do they shape your strategy for the next sort of 5, 10 years?
Yeah. We all know and have a very strong belief and opinion that popping a very young child in front of a screen for a prolonged period of time isn't a very good idea. We all feel that. We perhaps have different levels of understanding as to why that's a bad idea. My job is to help people understand that there is an alternative
Yeah.
and that alternative has a much better long-term outcome for that child. Understanding play and understanding games is absolutely the way that children develop. It's the way we create social interaction.
Yeah.
In a world of AI where so many questions can be answered so quickly, how we engage one another and think is more important than ever.
Joe, I really agree with you there, Joe. I think yeah, I think that how we play games, I think, is a reflection on how we live our lives as well. Um, and actually, we can use the things that we learn in play throughout the rest of our lives. I mean, even in running businesses,
Absolutely, yeah.
how we play, I think, reflects in how we run businesses. How we
Absolutely.
play is can be, well, depending on what game you're playing, can be very strategic and those sort of things. Things that are really great for business owners of the future.
Correct. It's. I also think it's funny, isn't it? When you start younger years in a business, you're doing it because it's a good way of making money, and you're trying to do something, and blah blah blah, and you want to, you're inherently addicted to the play of it, of actually, can I do it? Can I make it better? Can I grow it? Can I, for want of a better phrase, beat your opposition.
Yeah,
That's kind of what we're all doing, isn't it?
yeah,
Whether that opposition, as a business coach is another business coach, or another way that a business can spend money, you're all trying to prove that there's a worth to what you're doing, and it is a bit of a game.
yeah.
As you get older, you get a bit more absorbed in what you're doing, and particularly, I've now, my children are 13 and 10. I now live and breathe that experience of them playing younger and see how well they're doing in life and at school and stuff. But you become a bit more philosophical about it all, and you become much closer to purpose than win. And when you combine winning and purpose together, that's when the sort of real magic happens.
And I think the other thing with games as well is that you're learning how to win whilst sticking to the rules, whilst strategically thinking. And I think that's another important thing in today's world. So it's still winning, as you say, but it's keeping in the framework of rules, thinking about strategically, which again is a great thing for people to learn. So look, you mentioned earlier that Jaques invented
Yeah,
or helped popularize games such as croquet and
that's
table
it.
tennis and
Yeah, invented ping pong. It
yeah,
was just a sort of nothingness before that. We made the rules, trademarked the name ping pong.
brilliant.
Croquet was our invention. We wrote the original rules. And in fact, chess, indeed, we popularized the game of chess. So by designing the original Staunton chess set. So the way that we now know a chess set to look was designed by us, which is
Done by you. So
bonkers. The world's most played game,
yeah.
which is chess, we popularized, and the world's most played sport, ping pong, we invented. That's a
Wow, what a history to
weird
take.
thing to get your head around.
So, in today's toy market,
Yep.
how do you decide when to modernize a classic game versus creating something completely new?
So there's always ways of there are people out there that invent games now, actual games inventors, and that's not what we do, and that's not who we are. There's a very successful company called Big Potato, which are really good, dream up great games. There's quite a lot of different companies doing that, but that's not the piece of the market we occupy.
Mm-hmm.
Those games are they're great, but they are for entertainment more than anything.
Yeah.
And we have a bit more of a deeper purpose than simplified entertainment. And actually, most of the things we do always have multiple different layers to the benefits of that particular toy, game, whatever it may be.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
So we don't, so I think to answer the question, we don't really modernize things. We almost simplify things,
Okay.
but perhaps enhance our understanding of what that thing is. I
Yes.
think is where I go to. Humans are
Yeah.
cleverer now. We
Yeah.
understand what all these different things mean and all the different layers.
Yeah. Absolutely, I get that. I get that. Yeah, we're developing it all the time, aren't we? And thinking about new
Absolutely.
ways. Um, so okay, Joe. So, what would you say the biggest challenges the business has faced over
Oh,
the recent years?
huge challenges, good and bad. Challenges are good and bad, aren't they? The boom of COVID
Right.
was a really hard challenge of bringing in lots of inventory and keeping up the demand and running a business in lockdown conditions and 3xing your turnover in 3 years and all the complexities that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
Bad is running away with that and thinking we'd got the hang of it.
Okay.
And actually, the demand was probably, we 3x'd our turnover, but the business has actually doubled underneath, if that makes any sense. So the sort of the extra third was a flattering.
Yeah.
And then buying for that growth curve and then running out of money and having to restructure the business and going through the financial pains of a CVA and all that kind of thing. That's really hard psychologically to get through, nearly losing everything. That's quite hard.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so, from every end of the scale, you know, I built a house when I was a few years younger than this now. I've lived there 10 years.
Yeah.
And it just gave me a really deep appreciation for every time you see that great big house or that hugely successful business, there is a journey in that person which has nearly lost it all.
Yeah.
They've risked everything, it's upside down. They have put themselves at a point in time under extreme pressure because it doesn't come easy to anybody. It just isn't that. There are moments where everybody feels like they're losing their mind, or is there any point? It's losing money, whatever that current catastrophe could be. But you learn how to regulate your thinking around that and think about things in systemized processes to work through solutions to even the most unsolvable of problems.
Yeah, learning from those things, and I was lucky enough previously to work with um, a fantastic entrepreneur and business owner. He's passed away now, but and I won't sort of say the full story of it, but this particular gentleman had built up businesses and lost all his money twice, been bankrupt
Yeah.
twice. Okay. Now that gentleman was called Irvine Seller. Okay. Now the ultimate legacy that he left was he built the Shard
Wow.
at London Bridge. So he went bust
I
twice,
recognize
lost
the
all
name.
his
I
money.
recognize the name. I've seen that story. It's a great story. I know. I recognize the name as you said it.
Yeah. So he went through all those challenges and those difficult things, and he learned from them. Um, and ultimately left that legacy on the skyline. And I think that links in well with you, is that we never know what sits behind these successful people.
No, absolutely not.
What they've gone through, what they've had to go through, what they've learned from. So that's fantastic. So leading on from that, Joe, what during that difficult time frame that you just sort of described there, what would you say the biggest lesson that you learned was?
Just that even if the problem isn't immediately there, even if the solution to the problem isn't immediately in front of you, as a business owner, and I think unfortunately it's a bit more of a male trait as well, we are always driving to try and answer a question very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes you just got to accept you're having a really shit time and roll through that and work your way through it. Something someone said to me at the time was, live every day at a time at that point. You as you grow a business, you become more and more strategic. You look further and further in advance. And I'm talking about Christmas 26 and blah, blah, blah. When the old shit hits the fan, and you can't map your way out of it, you just can't see it. You cannot see it. Work through that day.
Yeah.
Work through that day. See what happens the next day. Because sometimes, although you might not be aware that it's happening, you're working your way towards a different answer in the future. So if you can't see the solution, you do just have to take tiny steps each day. Don't always expect to solve the problem.
Which reminds me of a great saying, and I can't remember who said it now, but it was something along the lines of, you only need to see the next step, not the whole staircase.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, yeah. And that's how I got through the shit times,
Yeah.
because I didn't know what the way out was. I didn't think there was a way out, being totally honest. I couldn't see it. If you can't see a way out, you don't think there is one. So I
Yeah.
didn't think there was a way out, but I did just get up in the mornings and try my best to work the way through whatever the problems were that day and come up with creative solutions to navigate them. But there was very clearly a 2 month period where I didn't think there was a way out.
And that must I guess, put a lot of pressure on you, with a company that was sort of established so long ago in the eighth generation. How did you
Yeah.
how did you manage that pressure on you
You know what though? I get asked that a bit actually, and it's a funny one. And you take such ownership of the business that it becomes yours, is
Yeah.
one of the sort of answers. So you are the embodiment of it now, if that makes any sense.
Yes.
The other answer is when you're in, when you're in that incredibly dark, tricky position, you just don't think whether it's 1 day old or 230 years old. If you can't think past tomorrow, means you can't see 6 months forward. You're sure as hell not looking 200 years back. You know,
Yes.
it tends to be something you take into account when you're making positive strategic decisions to stay very true to what you believe the purpose of the business to be. When you're in those darkest moments, it's really hard to, that doesn't all fit in your head.
Yeah. No, actually, I get that, and that's a good way of looking at it, and so sort of saying, well, okay, look, I can only focus on now. I can only, and it's exactly what you were saying earlier. Yes, you can look back into the past and learn from the things that people did in the past. You can look to the future and think, well, where would we like to be? What would we like to achieve? But now is the only time, the only thing that you
Yeah,
can influence, that you can do
that's
anything.
it. That's it. And then you have to just work on now and see what happens.
Yeah,
But yeah.
very cool. I am, I was coaching a company that was, not in the same industry, but a family-run business that had been around for years and years and years. And I was speaking to this particular person, and I kept referring to them as the business owner, and he said, Simon, let me stop you there. He said, I don't own this business. I'm just the steward of this business for the time being. My role is to make sure that I pass this business on in a better condition than when
That's
I
it. That's it.
sort of took it on myself. He
We,
said, so
we, we
I
sometimes
don't
think
look at myself as the business owner. I'm just
that's
looking
it.
at it as that I'm looking after it for the time being.
Polish the egg and pass it forward.
Yeah, that's great. I like that. I like that.
That's what we say.
Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah,
And
it is. The thing I also think is so, there's so much complexity sometimes in very old family businesses and different generations coming in and everything like this, that there's so much mess to sort out
mm,
that you almost can't think about the importance of legacy until you fix the immediate current, if that makes any sense. So
yeah,
I think we spent a long time coming, turning it into a business really, because it wasn't much of a business when we inherited it.
yeah, yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, look. And so we've talked about challenges that you've experienced. If you could wave a magic wand right now, what challenge in your business would you like to solve?
It's a very good question. There's always it's funny, isn't it? You go to things like working capital constraints,
Yeah.
But I also think it's a good thing for companies to have progressive growth rather than accelerated growth. We've had really accelerated growth in the past, so I don't really crave doubling turnover next
Mm,
year. Um, it's funny, isn't it? We've fixed a lot since we put the business into a CVA 2 years
mm.
ago. So it's perhaps a really nice picture of how the business is. The fact that I don't think there's anything I'd particularly wave a magic wand on and want to fix right now. I'm really loving running it. It's really good fun. I've got an amazing team. We're doing some really good products. Sales are good. I feel like, yeah, I don't really see any fundamental flaws. It's a strange thing to say.
That's good to hear. It's lovely to hear that's the case. And um, so as that family-run business with deep roots, how do you manage leadership and decision making sort of across that generations? Because am I right in saying that you now co-run the business with your cousin? Is that right?
No, I run it myself now.
You
So
run it yourself.
he left
Okay.
about 18 months ago, nearly 2 years ago.
Okay.
Um, so it's simplified the decision-making process, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's hard moving from the previous generation to the current one, of course,
Yeah.
but we did that quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so the decision-making process was hard and it's much easier now.
It's much easier now. Okay. Great. And look, um, Joe, there's one question that I always like to ask everyone that's kind enough to join me on this discussion. And that's this. What advice would you give to an 18-year-old you?
Oh,
So
that's a
if
good
you
one.
could go back and speak to yourself when you were 18, what would you say to yourself?
It it's the considered confidence that only comes with time and sort of believing yourself more. And just I was always, as a lot of enthusiastic ambitious 18-year-olds are,
Yeah.
just overly ambitious and overly keen to take the risk. But you know, I wouldn't have changed anything about my journey. You know, the mistakes have crafted the person. um yeah, and I don't ever think I've worked too much or too little. I feel very proud. I spend lots of time with my children, but yeah, my 18-year-old self, I think trust the process. And it is a process, and it doesn't, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day and all that old sort of saying.
Yeah.
But it is a crafted, sculpted thing, a career. You know, when you look at people like Warren Buffett and a lot of those people, you know, even Steve Jobs to a fair degree, a lot of their success came in much later life. And I
Yes.
think we live in a very highly influenced digital world at the moment where everyone is perceiving a get rich quick scheme and seeing something. And so, you know, we're so aware of everything and everybody around us. We only compare ourselves to the brightest star a million miles
Mm.
away, that we don't really allow ourselves to have our own quiet confidence, and just build that journey out, you know. Humbleness. I probably like to say I'd like to have been a lot more humble when from 18 for probably 20 years.
You know what? There was what you said there was great. There was a lot of things wrapped up in that. Confidence but not overconfident. Believe in yourself. Trust the process. Be humble. Um, I liked what you said about them, and I always joke and say, isn't it amazing how long an overnight success takes?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because
Takes
of
10
what you
good years
say.
to become an overnight success. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So like, so yeah, look, you sort of said that, don't always expect that to happen. So some great shares in there. I love that. Thank you very much, Joe.
No.
Well, look, Joe, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today and sharing more about your business, but also your journey as well. So
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really, really appreciate it, Simon. Thank you so much. It's really good fun.